The title of today's virtual event is 2008 versus 2020, Job Advice During Economic Uncertainty. Tonight's session is brought to you by the UMass Amherst Alumni Association. I wanted to introduce you to the team behind the scenes of tonight's session. My name is Karen Schultz-Battistoni. I'm the Director of Alumni Volunteer Relations. And then along with me is Jared Shine, class of 2020, who is working on his degree in philosophy. He is the one that brought this idea to me, and we had a conversation, and out of that conversation, this event was created. So many thanks to Jared, and he's here with us today to ask the questions of the panelists. Stephanie Subak is the Director of Constituent and Regional Programs here in the Alumni Relations Office, and the three of us will be here monitoring the chat box. In addition to monitoring the chat box, a few details about the session. This is being recorded. So this session being recorded, by participating in it, you are consenting to being part of a recorded session. For all attendees, your camera and your microphone are muted, so those will not be broadcasting. We will be showing the camera views of our panelists tonight. If you have any questions, you will see the chat box at the bottom of your screen where you can chat with us, and you can also raise your hand, so feel free to enter your question in there. Many of you submitted questions to us in the registration, and we're trying to answer as many of those as possible, but if there's additional questions that come to mind, feel free to add those into the box as well. Once we have completed the session, we will be taking the recording of the session and adding closed captioning to it. And then we will be posting it onto our webpage. Everybody that registered for the event will get a notification once we post it on the web. Okay, now on to our panel. So tonight's panel is Michael Balabanov, class of 2008, Sam Smith, class of 2008, Greg Walters Jr., class of 2009, and Sherry Warden, class of 2008. So I want to welcome all of our panelists. We're going to now switch views, and we're going to bring up the cameras of all of our panelists, and we'll get started with your questions.
All right, yeah, so as Karen mentioned, my name's Jared. I'm a philosophy major, and I'm graduating this May, as probably most, or a lot of you are as well. I just want to say, first of all, thank you to the panelists for coming and sharing some of their wisdom with us today. I really appreciate it personally as someone who is going into this uncertain economic time. So thank you guys, and also thank you to all the attendees for coming and making this event happen. So we're going to start with the first question, which is how long...
Before you start, hey,
yep.
Sorry, Jared, before you just start with the first question, there's one more thing that I wanted to say, and I apologize for forgetting to say it. I did just want to comment to everyone and let them know that this time we're in is unprecedented. And right now, while we're connected with technology, we know that for the class of 2020, your senior year looks a lot different than you anticipated it would look. So we acknowledge that it's a lot to process and a lot to handle. While we can't guarantee steps to get the perfect job, we hope that we can offer some stories and experiences from alumni who graduated during the economic recession in 2008, 2009. Each person will be offering their own opinions and experiences. We encourage you to use this information as just one piece of the information you will use to make some decisions. And for current students, we encourage you to remember to connect with other resources you have on campus, such as the Career Services Office, your academic advisor, and your professors. Everyone is here to help you and to support you. Alumni and students can connect with us through our Alumni Advisor Program online at umassalumni.com/advisors to get career help and connect with people virtually. Okay, now we'll turn it back to Jared. Sorry about that interruption, and he'll start off with some of the questions that you submitted in the registration box.
Yeah. All right, so to get going, the first question, how long did it take you to find a job after graduation? Based on how long it took, did you adjust your job search? If so, when did you adjust what you were doing? And I think Sam is going to start us off with answering this question.
Yeah, hi. So just for a quick intro, my name is Sam Smith. I'm currently the associate news editor for digital content at UMass Amherst, just to give some context of where I am versus how I got there. So To answer the first question, I actually got a job pretty quickly out of graduating. I graduated in May 2008, and my first real job was a contract position with Hanover Insurance in Worcester for, I think it was a content manager for like their internal system, but the market crashed pretty much right as that happened. So while I got a job really soon afterwards, within 3 months of having that job, I was laid off. And after that, it became increasingly more challenging to find a job from there between then and 2010. So to adjust to that, I went into my job search in 2008 a little bit more confident than I left it, because it was before the market crashed. So I would say I got a sense of humility after that first job, and I became a lot more malleable in like what I was looking for, and much more willing to keep an open mind of what I was looking for a job after that. I think, Greg, you're going to answer this question too, right?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and piggy up. Hi, I am Greg Walters. I actually was supposed to graduate in 2008, but I watched CNN and saw the recession, decided, yeah, let's go ahead and add an extra year and get an extra degree. So I got my communication degree as well as AFRAM degree. But to kind of answer the question, my first job, I actually was offered a job 3 days before graduation at Amherst Community Television, which was my internship that year. So my internship actually spawned from being a local internship where I would do like, you know, basically I'd work during the summer, kind of do meetings in terms of community service meetings. I'd kind of tape, so I did all the video stuff as the government access coordinator at Amherst Community Television. And I took a risk, and this was the first job I took leaving home. And then the hardest part was having a job and being able to find the next opportunity. And so I was fortunate enough to have also interned with NBC in 2008 and kept in touch and just kept peppering every so often. And that eventually led to an opportunity at NBC. Worked there for about nine or so years, did that, loved it. And then I moved out to Colorado about 2017, where I am working as a program manager in the software as a service industry. So looking forward to answering more of your questions in this webinar.
All right, thanks Sam and Greg for the thoughtful answers. So moving on, our next question is, should I try for any job or look for the perfect job? What did you do? And Sherry's gonna weigh in a little bit on this one.
So hi everyone, my name is Sherry Warden. Similar to Greg, I actually was supposed to graduate in spring of 2007 and ended up graduating in spring of 2008 because I took an internship as a requirement and didn't take any classes because for hospitality and tourism management, it was required that you did some sort of internship during your years at school. And in doing that and having some paperwork malfunctions, I ended up having to stay not just for fall of 07, but also for spring 2008, which kind of required me to get a full-time job in spring 2008. That job, I walked in to one of the hotels locally and got an interview and essentially was hired on the spot for a front desk associate. But in essence of trying to answer that, like look for any job, at that point, you know, I had that full-time job and was excited to kind of be in hospitality and be working in the career field that I was looking forward to working in, and continued on and went to career fairs at UMass, kind of tried to follow the hospitality path, interviewed with a lot of different hotel chains. Nothing was kind of panning out, and I kept going that route. I did end up actually through a network connection through UMass. I was involved in the marching band and actually had a marching band connection who already worked in a hotel who was able to get me into kind of another, I'll call it a dream role. So I kind of lucked out with this and was a hotel manager starting in September of 2008. But also in September of 2008 was when the real like market crash happened, and kind of my whole dream job kind of turned into, I'm going to call it a hot mess, because from all of the, recession issues that happened within the hospitality industry, we really had to cut back on any expenses. I had to make sure that my staffing was very minimal. I was working 60 to 70 to 80 hours a week to cover all of the different staff positions that I had lost because we had to keep the budget so tight. And it kind of turned into a job that I wasn't really interested in anymore. And this kind of pushed me into, thinking about, as Sam was saying, being malleable and looking outside of the box. And I ended up kind of getting into a career through happenstance again, through another network connection, where I became a contracted employee at General Electric Aviation. And it was an entry-level job. It was, the official title was material expediter. So I was essentially pushing, aircraft engine parts out of our facilities doors and making sure that it got to our customers on time. Found that I really enjoyed that and kind of pushed that into a career with GE because I apparently did something right and they hired me. And I've gone through 3 different positions with GE now, and that's been about 8 years. So I think that it's really important to kind of take into account, what do you like about what you're doing? What I liked about what I was doing was the customer service aspect. So trying to continue and carry that on into a new type of role is really what I was looking for. So maybe kind of think of like, maybe skills you're good at or types of, ways you like to serve your community. And that could kind of lead to what I don't want to say a perfect job, but what a perfect job could be. So.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. So I'm Mike Balavana. I'm currently the Senior Vice President of Sales at The Guardian, a global media company. My first job, however, I think it goes back to that, was an allocation analyst at TGX Companies, and I had that right out of college. I started in June 2008. I think it's a funny question. I don't think nobody can say that there's a perfect job. I think all jobs have obviously pros and cons and things you like about them and things you dislike about them. But I think that to that question, when I think about, my first job wasn't perfect. I thought it was going to be interesting. And I think sometimes the advice would be that when you're looking for a job, especially during a time where the economy's not good, there's less jobs out there, you think it's tough. There is kind of this thing of, if you take the job that's really wrong for you, that job is not going to last for a long time, and you're going to be looking for a new job while you have that job. There's obviously money factors in play and obviously things of that nature. But I think it's important to, as Sherry said, focus on the things you want to do and focus on the tasks you want to do and focus on the things you like, because in the end, whatever job you do get, you have to go there every day and you have to do those things. So I think it's not about finding the perfect job or finding any job. It's finding a job that there's parts of it that you like. And, I got laid off from my first job at TGX during the height of the recession. And I would say that when I was looking for another job during that time, I had definitely looked at many different industries, looked at different places, but I think the most important part is making sure that you are using all the tools that you can to find jobs, but also, again, going back to the thing of the things that you want to do and the actions you want to do and what actually you like doing. So it's not about any job or a perfect job. It's kind of about finding the right fit for a number of things for you. It's kind of my answer to that.
All right, thanks, Mike and Sherry. So our next question we have are, I guess more generally, what are some good ways to find jobs? We're going to jump back to Mike.
Yeah. You guys have so much more at your fingertips to find jobs than we ever did, even in 2008. I think the whole panel would agree with me on that. I think now that I'm hiring for jobs, right? So I'm kind of at the other end of like people that are applying for jobs in my organization. Like, I got to tell you, LinkedIn is one of the best tools out there. I think that LinkedIn in the last, 5-6 years has revolutionized the way to find jobs. But also, I think the big thing there is to not be afraid to use connections and not be afraid to ask people. I think it's really important that if you're looking for a job in a certain field or you're looking for a job at a certain company, just see who you know at that company or who somebody knows at that company through LinkedIn. And then reach out to people at those companies and just see if you can get an informational interview, just learn more about the company, not for a specific job, not for a specific thing, but talk to people that work at places that you want to work at or the industries you want to work at. And, you know, you're not going to get everyone to say yes, but a good percentage of people, when they're approached in a way of just talking about what they're doing, will say yes. And especially you can find a connection through UMass, or you can find a connection through family or other things. I think it's really important that you be bold and just ask those questions. I think most people don't do it, but the people that do find success in it. And I would say that LinkedIn is how I found this job. Somebody found me and kind of started the conversation. And I would say that other tools, obviously, you have the tools of UMass that are obviously great, as well as, I would say, just talk to people and talk to friends and talk to family and just talk about what you want to do or the industry you want to be, and find people that are in that industry or in that company and just chat about it. And things come up from those conversations all the time.
Sherry?
Yeah, I was pretty much just gonna jump on. A lot of the ways that I worked to get the jobs that I had were reaching out to connections, and you know, they don't have to be like, you know, your best friend or someone you know really well, but you know, use the community that you have and just, you know, ask those questions. And it's just, yeah, I had another thought on this that I'm losing right now. But one of the other things that I used was, you know, I work for GE. I really enjoy the company that I work for, and they have a really great kind of, once if you get in somewhere and they have a lot of opportunities, like GE is a global international company with multiple divisions, multiple facets. Talk to your HR people if you get into, you know, that rhythm. Find somewhere that you like, and you know, talk to HR professionals, even like outside of or in LinkedIn or something. But the last job that I got, I had multiple meetings with my HR team so that they could find me somewhere that would fit what I was interested in doing, and you know, use any of those. And connections can come from anything. Connections can come from a coffee shop. They can come from like your next door neighbor. They can come from a family relative, a friend, just anyone. So don't be afraid to ask.
All right, awesome. So moving on, the next question. How did you balance job searching and looking for a new place to live? And we're going to turn to Greg for this one. Oh, Greg, you're still
basically.
There you go.
Oh, can you hear me now? There we go. So job searching and trying to find a place to live in the same time was very, very tough. So to give you a bit of a backstory, I originally from Connecticut, New England kid through and through. Moved in. Me and my partner moved in to a place in New York. We were trying to make it work, but realized quickly that the rent and the price points were very, 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 very tough. So given that I had a full-time job and still was making money, I did not want to lose that or kind of ruin that. So what I started to do was network, started to reach out internally. So I used to work for NBC. And what was great about working for NBC, similar to Sherry's story, NBC was once upon a time part of GE and a big national company. And so what was great was I started to ask around. You know, I asked people I trusted internally, like, hey, I'm looking to potentially maybe make a move somewhere in this company. What are some ideas? The first thing I did was I got myself at my current job was sort of like, and you can do this either at your job or through your network, is getting a mentor. That's the best thing you can do to kind of help guide you through that. And so then from there, he put me in touch with an individual who worked for NBC in Denver, and we met. And actually, it was actually interesting because I had interest of moving out to somewhere to a new position, especially particularly to Denver, but wasn't sure if it was going to really work. And so I actually decided to take some vacation time that I had and decided to do a sort of a road tour. So if you know you want to switch into a different job, one of the best things you can do is, if you're in a job, use some of that vacation time or free time to go do some interviews or go and travel if you can. Obviously right now it's going to be a little bit different. Things would look different, but it's all about networking and getting out there. And so eventually what happened was, from just constant correspondence and him coming out and liking what I had and me visiting, I eventually was able to get an internal transfer, which was beyond me, because getting an internal work transfer means that it's simply just they're going to move you out to a location. And I got lucky enough where they offered me relocation. And so I took the opportunity and took the risk, even though I knew it wasn't in the direction I wanted to go long term, but I knew the opportunity to move was great, given the fact that I had a job. I was moving with a job and my pay didn't stop. So the biggest things really is when you're looking for a job and moving, make sure you do yourself a solid and look at not only where you want to live, but the price point of wanting to live, and making sure that, hey, financially it's the right decision. Because the reason why I moved from New York to Denver was for purely to kind of save money and have a better lifestyle. And I can honestly say that that was worth the risk taking. And you have to do what's best for you, but you also have to remember that finding a job when you have a job is good, but don't be desperate and don't go for the first job that just because it's a shiny new object. Take the time to really, look at the job description. Can you do this? Does this make sense? And what's crazy is it comes to a point where you have the good option thing is that you'll have is having a bunch of options versus just one opportunity. And so being able to go in with your mind open and your eyes wide open is something that is very, very key, because there are things you might not realize when you leave. And one of the things I didn't realize when I left was there might be some different challenges and or the organization might be different. But that's just to say that, hey, this is, you have to be resilient, and the good outweighs the bad, and the opportunity to move to a different location and different part of the country because the company paid for it is something that is amazing, and you should take advantage of. And so just being able to just be patient, but that opportunities will come. But if you want to move, on the other flip, if you want to move somewhere, just go ahead and do it. Use your network. See who you already know in the areas you want to move to, and then maybe you can do couch surfing, or maybe you can even spend some time at a relative's in that city, and then do jobs. But just take the risk, go out, but make sure you're going with your eyes open.
All right, great. So moving on to the next question. We're going to talk a little bit about networking now. So the question is, how did you network to find a job in the past? And we're going to turn to Sam for this one.
Cool. So I would say that for me, at least, networking is something I've done much more recently in my career, and not as much as I did, I would say, in 2008 when I was just getting my career off the ground. But I will say that I find it invaluable at this point in time. So a little bit of backstory of where I am now. So I work at UMass now. My niche is nonprofit higher ed, which I've been in pretty much since 2012. And I'd say that what has been very valuable for me is to build up a repertoire with those you work with, and just always leave yourself as someone who is accessible and reliable, and just if you're a good person to work with, folks will remember that, and that'll serve you very well when you move on to your next job. And if when you're building that connection and those connections for you moving forward. So alongside working for UMass, I also am a freelance graphic designer and photographer. But I would say nearly all of my gigs that I have now are based off of people I either worked with or folks that they know, because word of mouth travels really fast with people who just know you do a good job. So I would say that I have really built up a community of people who know me just because they know that I am pretty good at what I do, but I'm also just good at showing up and being a very accessible person in my field. So I would say that if you're just starting off, start to think about those communities you have now, if it's an RSO that you're in, or if it's just any sort of affiliation you have on campus or in an internship or whatever. Just start making lists of ways that you can get involved, or people that you might know who can vouch for you now, and keep that going, because as your career continues, that's not going to end. I feel like you're just going to kind of build that up more and more and more. So I would say just start that now and you'll be great. I mean, I think it's really valuable to keep that going.
Yeah, I think that great advice. And I think for one of the things, I'll give you a story about how I got my job after I got laid off. So I got laid off in May of 2009 during the height of the recession. Retail company, obviously not the best place to be at the time. And I took the summer. I did some, some random jobs here and there. Was on unemployment, which is kind of, a thing. And I was just visiting my old college roommate in DC, and he worked at the Washington Post at the time. And I had no idea thinking about moving to DC, but he's like, why don't you apply for a job here in advertising? Never thought I'd be in advertising. And applied, drove back to Boston, kind of had some interviews, they flew me to DC for an interview, had the interview, got the job. 2 weeks later, moved to DC and just overnight. And I ended up being in advertising. Probably been being laid off was one of the best things that could have happened in my career because of where, how it ended up to where I'm at now. And I think that it's taking opportunities like that and using communities. Like that was a friend of mine who was my roommate at college, who I was just randomly visiting, and never thought that would turn into a job, but it turned into a job and actually turned into a career. So I think that it's really utilizing all opportunities around you and not be afraid to ask anyone to talk about their job. There's a lot of people in the same place, or they have been in the same place as you. So I would say that networking is super important, specifically during economic downturn, because there's less jobs, more competition, all of that you hear. And I think that the more you can use your own personal networks, as I mentioned in the earlier question, to really just figure out who you know at a certain company or who you know at a certain place, that's going to give you a leg up that a lot of people don't have. And it's all about increasing the odds of winning. I'm in sales. It's the same thing in sales. It's increasing the odds of winning. You're not gonna bat 1,000, but if you can increase your odd 10%, that's 10% more than you had before. And I think that don't get discouraged, because sometimes some people will say no, and some people will not talk to you, and you will not get a response, and you will not get a response to a resume. But like, keep going and keep using these skills, because I do think that it's all about increasing your odds of success and odds of winning.
All right, great. And so sticking with the same topic, our next question is LinkedIn worth joining? And if so, what do I do and how do I do it? We're gonna go back to Mike for this one.
Yeah, so I think joining is a no-brainer. Everyone should be on LinkedIn. It's like the place for just business to be done and things. I think Greg is going to talk to you more about the premium product and how he found that useful. But in my expertise, in my mind, it's to be frank, it's funny. When we started UMass is when Facebook first started, right? And I think that when I think about LinkedIn, even though I'm on LinkedIn all the time and on a daily basis, just because for my job, there's a lot of connections and things that I do or use, or people message me. But I would say it's been interesting to change. When people apply to jobs now, they would apply there. I'm searching for a role in San Francisco right now. People have been applying and then linking it with me and sending me a detailed description that they just applied to this position. It's interesting. It's the first time it's ever happened. I think it's like a new way of doing things, I guess. But I think LinkedIn is great for a number of reasons. You can just click on, UMass, whatever company you're looking for, and you can see who works there that went to UMass, right? That you are somewhat connected to. And then all it takes is you reaching out to that person, whether through email or through LinkedIn, and saying, hey, I'm a fellow UMass alumni. I'm looking to talk about, I really like what this company is doing. There's an open position here. I just want to understand what the company does, how the company works, anything you can share with me. And again, if you do that enough times, more often than not, people respond and you'll have informational interviews. And I think that I wish that LinkedIn was as prevalent when I was looking for jobs, because I do think it's changed the recruiting field significantly. And I think it's a must tool, and I would just connect with everybody, start connecting with people. Like it's fine. And the more connections you have, the more second connections you have. And obviously the more chances you have of knowing people in certain industries, certain companies. So I find it invaluable in my everyday life and my job search and everything. But that's, I think so. That's a must have.
Cool. Yeah. So I joined LinkedIn 2005, and it's really come a lot in 15 years. You have to really kind of think about that, how much has come. I remember being in sophomore in college, like, what the hell is this? I was like, oh, it's the business version of Facebook. Okay, maybe it'll figure itself out, whatever. So fast forward to 2008, I find myself laid off in January. And I knew that I had this tool, LinkedIn, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and sign up for LinkedIn Premium. And that spawned me just hitting the pavement and blitzing. And not only is it worth having LinkedIn, it's also worth having the premium. Here's why. It shows you what people are looking and saying about you at different companies, and gives you some analytics and statistics on, hey, maybe I should look at five people look at your application here, or 10 people look at your application here. So what it does is it creates your own personal buzz to get you excited about going after jobs, because, oh, 5 folks looked at this. Oh, 10 folks looked at this. And so you become very multifaceted and start to look at your resume and start to apply to things that are in your wheelhouse. Going back to Mike's point, it's a numbers game. And so I hit the ground running, and I will never forget this. So basically I started it in October. I was interviewing and I had a job 2 weeks later. And to give you another fact, I got laid off again this January. So I was laid off January 9th. January 10th, I was on LinkedIn, found a job, and I was hired February 24th. So if that's not showing you that the technology works, that's the bread and butter. It's just not giving up, using the tools that are in front of you. And let me tell you, like, you get connections with colleagues, and it's like, oh, hey, you might not know that your best friend's sister actually knows the HR rep over at NBC, and then there it is. And so it's like it gives you a better view into what the world has, and it's come a long way in 15 years, and it's the preferred method used. Coming from an old job where at Fastly, we actually used what was called Sales Navigator, which was a separate entity, a separate part to LinkedIn that actually attached to your LinkedIn profile, where you were just basically going at and looking at new business and doing sales and kind of hitting the ground and looking at that. So there's a lot of things about LinkedIn that have come a long way, and a lot of folks put time and effort into it, and people take it serious. Take it from me, who's been in the industry since 2009. People really take this serious, LinkedIn, and it's not a joke. And it's like it can get you a job. I, for one, in the last 2 years, I got 2 jobs off of LinkedIn. All I had to do was just sit on my computer and see what was chomping. So it's just being able to just, look at the detail. I mean, it's great, because then you can see what's nice about the premium side is it literally break your resume down and give you a percentage match of, hey, you are this percent qualified for this job. So you can start to see what you're good at, and then that just kind of dials you into different things. But the best part is like Mike said, and I'm going to go back to it, because of LinkedIn, it's a numbers game. It's just, you got to go out there and grab it, and it's you'd be surprised. Like I said, I blitzed for 2.5 weeks, and I had, after that week of nothing I heard, the week after that, I had interviews almost every single day. So, yeah.
All right, yeah, great advice, guys. And just kind of circling back to what Mike said about reaching out to UMass alums on LinkedIn, through my own experience over the course of the past couple of months looking for jobs, I've reached out to UMass alums and even some random people myself, and I've just been really surprised at like how willing, UMass alums and some just random people have been to, spend 15 minutes on the phone with me and talk to me a little bit about their job. So, I mean, it's definitely scary at first, but it's definitely something I would recommend doing as well. Also, yeah, moving on, our next question is more about skills. It's many jobs require experience that people might not have, and how or what's like a good way to handle that. We're going to go to Sherry for this one.
So my first thing is, if there is anything that says entry level in the job description and also says like 1 to 3 years experience or something, ignore that and apply anyways, because you never know. Look, like, see, yeah, we agree. People just want, it's like a desire. There's some people say there's like requirements and desired characteristics for a job. A lot of people might put that in a required part of the job. It's not. Just apply for the job. You won't know unless you go after it. A lot of times companies even, they want people who kind of have a fresh mindset on things, and they want that ability to create that experience for you and help you learn within the company versus someone who has a couple years experience. And I'll even say, if you feel like you don't have an experience completely relative to a job, you have skills, you had things that you've worked on that can translate into that. And I think whenever, if you're going out and you get an interview with someone, think about the types of things that you have done in your past that maybe aren't job related, but is like a skill, like, that you're very organized and have some way to prove that. If you use a planner and you mark out every 5 minutes of your day, that's, some people look for that as a desired characteristic in a job. And I mean, as an example, this isn't necessarily my story, but I have a friend who I was actually I won't say I got her hired at my company, but she had told me maybe like a year prior that she was kind of down in the dumps with the job where she was. And a year later, we had a role open in our group. And, I wasn't sure what she did. I think she had something, but from what I gathered, she had some like operations management experience in a completely different industry, and everything was very different. And she also had an English degree. So you're talking about someone coming into an organization whose main people are engineers and like finance folks and things of that nature. So, English degree, the hiring manager for that position loved her, just that she was able to relate a lot of her past experiences to how she would be beneficial in the role that she was going after. She got hired as a contractor for GE, and then within a year got hired at GE because she really came up fast and really proved herself. And I think I want to add that your major doesn't define what types of roles you can go after, because again, like hospitality degree, and I say that, but when I translate that to where I'm at now, I have a business degree. So if I want to talk about that, I can talk about that. I've also, in interviews, when you're trying to relate and talk about how you're being resourceful, one of the things that I used in an interview was talking about how in a recession where I had budget cuts, I didn't order enough toilet paper for my hotel and had to go to another hotel to kind of like barter and trade toilet paper. And again, you don't know what someone's gonna think is a good story or a good qualification for something, and that can end up getting you the job because, again, apparently they thought it was a good story and a way to be resourceful, so I got hired. But yeah, just don't discount yourself is really what I'm getting at.
All right, awesome. So moving on, our next question. So it's going to be, what, if anything, did you do to hone or develop skills during your job search? We're going to head to Sam for this one.
Yeah, so for me, I think it's a little bit twofold. So to bounce off like what Sherry said, I've had a few positions that were absolutely not at all related to what I thought I wanted to do, but in those positions, I really tried to sell myself as like, well, I am this is my role, but I also can do these things. Perhaps you would like me to do these as well. And so a couple of my roles, for example, were just kind of entry-level admin assistant kind of jobs where very basic office work. But during those positions, I would mention, I also have graphic design skills. I also have photography skills, and I have writing skills. Where can I best use these while I'm already in this job? And most, if not all, employers are very amenable to that. You're basically giving them free labor in some ways, like you're getting paid to do this thing, but you're also offering to do these other things. But it's a really great resume booster, and it keeps that kind of linear path going on your resume for showing that you've developed these skills over the years, and you've been trying to do them like every year that you're in the workforce. And second to that is I really tried to volunteer when I could. I know that's not a possibility for everybody, but I had the time and ability to do so, both with my photography and graphic design. I just to get my name out there. If I was looking at job boards and things where people were like, we just need this like real quick project, At the time, you know, I was single with no children. So I was like, yep, I have all the time in the world. I'm going to do it. So I did as much of that as I could in the meantime. And so then when I went to go look for another job that was more applicable to what I wanted to do, I had this arsenal of things that I was just kind of doing on the side. And so now even on my resume, I really tried to show both my career path, but also my volunteer path, which I think a lot of people value because it shows that you're committed to both causes that you're passionate about, but also committed to just, you know, perfecting your skills and getting better for your own betterment, which I think is very helpful.
All right, great advice. So moving on to the next question. We're going to talk about goals a little bit now. So how far did the recession set you back in achieving your long-term goals time-wise? And what were some ways that you were able to adapt? And we're going to turn to Sherry for this one.
Yeah, so the big thing that kept coming to mind, or keeps coming to mind with this is, I'll say that I definitely expected to be, had to have purchased a property at some point in like my mid to late 20s. Cause you know, when you're talking about stability and future, you know, you kind of want something that you can call your own. That's equity versus you paying rent to a landlord. That didn't happen. I'll also say that within the first, I think I've lived by myself for a total of 9 months post-grad because it wasn't affordable, honestly. I ended up having someone move in with me in my 1-bedroom apartment for like the last 4 months of my lease so I could afford day-to-day life. And from that point on, had a roommate until I moved in with my boyfriend, now husband. And so we actually just purchased our first home 4 months ago. And I'm 34, so a little behind on my timeline in that respect. And it was also only due to some other financial situations that we had come into. So I think that the whole housing situation was probably one of those things. I will say that I think I'm one of the lucky ones here, or maybe inexperienced is the other word. I have not been in the situation where I've been jobless since the recession. So I think it's just been being underpaid versus not paid. Again, like my first job, I was salaried, and I'll say it out loud because in 2008, I thought it was a lot of money, but $35,000, and it was not, you know, for a salaried job where I was working 60, 80 hours a week to cover someone, I was basically making $10 an hour as a manager of a property. And I think that is something that you need to be aware of. And I saw, not to add into another, I think I saw a conversation about like how to balance if you get a job, like financially, like do you ask for more money? Like never be afraid to ask. Always ask the question. They're not going to tell you they don't want you anymore if you ask the question. You know, they could just say, no, we can't afford to give you any more. But I think that was one of the things I'm trying to feel like I was confident enough to go after those like higher paying roles. So don't let that stop you from feeling like you can ask for more money if you start out not making as much as you thought you would.
Yeah, it's funny. I think that goals, I don't even remember what my goals were when I left college. I think it's you know, I think goals change dramatically all the time. So I think that the biggest thing I would say and the biggest lesson from goals is that I never thought I'd be in advertising, and I never thought I lived in DC and then now in New York. And the only way I got there is because of some turns and twists along the way with me getting laid off and, you know, somehow finding this job, as I mentioned in the last question. So I would say that you can have goals, but don't let the goals define everything you do around you, because things change and you just have to sometimes be flexible and go with the flow. So I think that if you have very discrete goals that you really want to hit in the next 3-4 years, if that's not going to be possible, don't don't worry about it. I think that things change, life changes, and I think you just have to go with the flow sometimes and see where things take you. Because with my experience, it's taken me to a place where now it's, has jump started my career after obviously a low point of getting laid off a year after college. So.
All right. Thanks for those answers, guys. So moving on. Let's see. So our next question for the panelists, we're actually going to skip number 10 just in the for time. We're going to the next question. We're going to talk a little bit about money. So what money mistakes did you make, and what can we learn from them? And for that, we're going to turn to Sherry again.
So I'll say that I didn't do this one as bad as other people, but credit cards are not your friend if you don't pay them off on a monthly basis. Just be very careful with the way that you manage that type of money, because it's not yours. You still have to pay it back, and you're going to have to pay it back tenfold. And I think that that's, something when you're starting out and you're maybe trying to, fund a new apartment or get furniture from somewhere. It's just take into account that you're going to owe that money back, and try to maybe budget for that and have like an idea of how to go about that. I wouldn't say this is a recession issue necessarily, but in, years after graduating, one of the reasons, again, that I don't think we ended up purchasing a property is because we ended up purchasing a timeshare in the middle of all that. So I would just avoid, don't make any unnecessary expenditures. And that can even be things like, like a haircut that you may not need. Like don't get your hair colored, like just get it cut, or don't go out for a mani-pedi, get the store brand, cheese versus the, fancy Kerrygold or something like that. I don't know. That was cheese was a bad example, but you know what I mean? I think it's just a manner of, taking a look at your budget, what you actually take home every week after all the taxes, and just making sure that you kind of allocate and know your limits on what you should spend on what. And I don't think that's something that gets taken into account enough, especially when you're starting out, because there's a lot of things you don't think of, because depending on where you live, you could have not just rent, but you could be paying like gas, electric, cable. You might have to pay for your water. That was not something that I had to do until my last apartment. So it's just trying to put the whole picture together. I think that's all I had on that.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Sherry. So now we're going to move on to some of the questions from the chat box that some of you guys have submitted over the course of the past 48 minutes. So we're going to start with this one. So I guess if any of the panelists would like to weigh in on this, you can just get going. So the question is, how important is it to follow up with companies that we've applied for? Is there a point I should give up on a role, or should I keep pressing until they give me a hard answer?
Never, 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 never. Let me tell you something. I essentially wanted to go for a certain company when I recently got laid off, and I worked my butt off to get that interview. I got the interview, right? But what I didn't realize was in the process, I also had other opportunities in the pipeline. And I followed up and was like, hey, listen, I have an offer on the table, and this is something that might come to happen where you have an offer on the table from two different parties. I want to obviously pursue this interview and see where this goes. And so sometimes there's going to be a risk in a way there. And so I decided to tell them, hey, I have an offer to start at the job in the next week. And so they decided that they couldn't get their time together, but I still had to make a decision. So I went with a job that I now currently have. And it was a risk worth taking, but it was also worth making the smarter move to get to a better place. But you never ever want to always follow up. But when it never feel your question is unanswered until you feel it's answered. That's one of the things that is great about the way we learned at UMass is we always challenge everything. So don't ever stop challenging. And that's something that, and you could do it in a way that's diplomatic and reasonable, but always follow up, always go for it, and never quit.
Does anyone else have anything to say about this?
I would say the one thing there though is obviously don't just apply for one role and keep following up there. You, as Greg said, you got to have a pipeline of things. So like,
Yep.
yeah, follow up, absolutely. But don't think that this dream job is just going to happen because it's going to happen. Definitely, I would say that follow up is super important. And I think follow up is even more important in job searching than anything. But I would say that the big thing there is make sure you have other things that you're doing instead of just pestering one job.
All right, anyone else, or should we move on?
I was just gonna say, don't be overly aggressive about it. Like it's, it's a note. You just say, hey, I'm looking into the, or are you still looking into me for this or something like that. Hope you have a nice day. Like, don't get overly pushy about something like that.
Yeah, definitely a good point to make. All right, so the next question that we're gonna ask, so it sounds like a few of the panelists' paths to get to their current positions weren't so straightforward / immediate. What are some top transferable skills that have helped you in a variety of job settings along the way?
Okay. I would say I have worked a lot of weird jobs, I'll be honest. I mean, I left UMass as a journalism major, and as over the past 12 years, the face of journalism has completely changed. And so I too have changed. But I would say being outgoing or just having an open mind is really appreciated. Just willingness to roll with it and being a good team player, willing to not be afraid to like give ideas, but also willing to listen. It just having a back and forth and being really like a good communicator, I think is very transferable regardless of your job. If you're a good person to work with, people feel that, like, especially like on your first interview, like if you're going in, either if it's in person or Zoom or phone, whatever, if you're able to just have a conversation with somebody and like listen to their questions and their thoughts and provide, good, thoughtful responses back and have that rapport, I would say, at least for me, like I find that most of the interviews I've had that go from one to the next to the other, or because we felt like we were just like a good fit. So if you feel like you can be that person, I would say that's a really good transferable skill.
I think
Yeah,
what's
awesome.
also, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, no, I think that problem solving, I think we do problem solving all the time. I think that you take for granted in college solving problems, but like at everyday life and everyday work life, you have to solve problems. So that is like, whether it's analytical, whether it's thinking outside the box, whether it's doing any of that, it's like that skill set I think we take for granted sometimes. It is something that is important because you're going to run into you already have run into situations where you have to think differently or do something, whether it's in class or another job or an internship. And that is a transferable skill that I think all of us can agree are in any job, because every day you can get up and you can have an email, you can have something that comes up and you're like, what am I going to do? And kind of the idea of solving problems is just I think a skill that can be attributed to any job that you do, whether it's this career or next career or whatever career it is.
I think having an open, like being able to like admit that you like, if you need help too, like with problem solving is like hugely important. I feel like I struggled with that at first, like, oh, I don't want to feel like I don't know anything. But then now I'm just like, I feel like now and well into my career, it's much more accepted, right? Like to just say like, I need help with this, like who wants to help me? And I feel like it problem solves it so much quicker.
I think especially if you're a grad, like you're just graduating, nobody expects you to have all the answers.
Exactly.
And I think that you're not going to have all the answers. So just don't think that you need to, and ask for help, ask questions. And that's my lesson.
All right, awesome. So now we're going to move on to a bit of a wrap up. So all the panelists have kind of distilled all of their knowledge and wisdom. I guess, Karen, did you want to say something else now?
Yeah, if I could. One of the things that I just wanted everybody to know is, first of all, thank you to all the panelists for sharing your insights and your thoughts and your comments. I think it's really helpful to have multiple perspectives. Hopefully you found this useful tonight to be able to hear the different perspectives, but to continue the conversation and to continue connections, We also want you to be able to feel connected to your UMass community. So we do have different resources through the Alumni Association. If you go to umassalumni.com, then you can pull up details. So for instance, we have the Alumni Advisor Program where you can connect with alumni for informational interviews, resume help, LinkedIn help, talking about interview preparation. We have career counselors. The first session with a counselor is no cost. Additional sessions, you get a UMass alumni discounted rate. And then we have lots of events like these. So if you go to umassalumni.com/events, it'll take you to the calendar where you can sign up for a lot of different events, and most of them are free right now as well. And then all of our webinars that we've done in the past are also part of our video library. So you can access that through umassalumni.com/career. So through that career resource, you can get information about job postings, job resources, and assessments. So now I know we want to turn back over to all of the panelists to give a little bit of a final thought. So to kind of close us out on a high note and to wrap up a few things on what your thoughts are in terms of things for people to think about as they leave today's session.
I can start, that's okay. I just wanted to say for those who are graduating now, I would just say to be honest with yourself and try to be amenable to keeping an open mind as you enter this next phase in your life. There's a good chance that your first job or two out of UMass won't be your dream job, but there is an opportunity to make that job a position that is meaningful to you. And don't be afraid to use your strengths to fill gaps and demonstrate your value to your employer as someone who can wear many hats. I mean, I've been in the nonprofit industry for a long time, and being a many hat wearer is like, people really like that. Also just having a sense of humor goes a long way. And I would say just making sure like you're a good fit, the culture, just keeping all those things in mind when looking, and you'll be good to go.
Yeah, I think to add to that, you know, first and foremost, congratulations. You just made a hell of a feat to get through college, because let me tell you, I would love to relive my college days if I could. And it's great because we all share UMass, but remember, it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. Take your time, pace yourself, because it'll come. And believe you me, I am 34 years old, and yes, there's probably things I want to do, but I'm so happier now than I ever was. So take your time, it will come, but just be persistent and stay determined.
Yeah, I think that's great thoughts all. I think the one thought I always think is that even during 2009 and 2008, you know, we thought the world was ending, and, you know, this will pass as well, and we'll get back to better times and brighter times, I think. And I think the biggest encouragement I would say is that don't give up, just keep going. As Greg and myself both said, it's a numbers game. There's jobs out there and you can find one. It's just how much you want to work to get one. And I think that the biggest thing you can do is just not get discouraged from not hearing back from recruiters and not hearing back from people, and just keep hopeful and motivated in that sense, and just keep moving, because the tips and tricks will work. It just might take more time than usual in that sense.
Yeah, and the only thing that I really want to add to that is that don't think that if you don't get a job right away, or if it takes you, you know, a year even to get what you would consider, you know, a next step job for post-college, this is so out of the realm of normal that no one is going to discount you for anything. If, you know, it looks like you have just graduated and you don't have something, you know, brilliant on your resume because you haven't been able to find a job. Like, use your resources, use your connections to do the best you can, and know that it does not mean that you don't, you know, have any value in the workforce if you can't find something. It is just that I hope I'm not being too much of a Debbie Downer, but it's a tough place, and really just surviving right now is where everyone is at. And if you can just take that and kind of accept that truth for what it is, and understand that you have a lot to offer, and you will have your chance to get that out there, and it you know, you're going to make it through, and it's going to be okay. It just might not be in the next month or 3, and it might take some time, and that is okay. Just,
it's very okay.
Yes, just I feel like that needs to be very much out there, and just know that you're valued.
We're also impressed with your resiliency, like seriously.
Yes, so much. So I think that's all I had for now. Go UMass.
Any final thoughts that you have, Jared, as you started us off? Any final thoughts to close us out?
I just want to thank everyone. I mean, I know you guys have probably had some really busy days today, and it's been a crazy couple of months, and I just appreciate all of you taking the time to talk a little bit about yourselves and give us some insight. So yeah, I mean, thank you, and thanks to Karen, thank you, and thanks for the Alumni Association for helping set this up, and yeah, go UMass.
Yes. All right. Well, in the next day or so, you're going to be getting a survey. All the people that came tonight just asking you to give us some feedback, and your feedback is what helps us to figure out what kind of events you'd like next. So if you could do that. We'll also send out to you some of the links that we sent into the chat box so that you have those links to those articles. As always, you are part of the UMass community, and we're thankful for you and your time. We wish you all the best, and go UMass, everybody. Have a great night.